Hello, this is Mrs. Murdock, and I'm going to talk about your immune system today, and specifically what a coronavirus, such as the COVID virus we're dealing with right now, does once it gets into your body, and then what your body's immune system does as a response. So first of all, let's ask a simple question. What happens? What happens when COVID-19 virus, right? What happens when a COVID-19 virus attacks your body cells? Attacks your body cells. Okay, so we're going to go down to the molecular cellular level here. And if you remember the last video, I talked about virus structure. So a coronavirus, which is what the COVID-19 virus is, it's a flu virus, and all flu viruses are coronaviruses, which just means they're shaped like a crown. So the structure of the coronavirus is something like this. It's circular, and around its edges, that black circle that I've just drawn is mostly made of a protein coat. Sometimes there are some lipids in there, but there are these surface proteins that are sticking out on the outside, which is why they call it a coronavirus, because you see it kind of looks like a crown. And then inside a virus, just like inside any virus, you also have some genetic material. And in the case of flu viruses, I think I've mentioned this already, that bit of genetic material that I've just drawn there is RNA, because this is an RNA virus. So this is a strand of RNA, which is the genetic material of this COVID-19 virus. And out here, these little red bits are surface proteins that are specific to this virus. Okay? So there you go. Those are basically the only parts of any virus are the kind of protein coat that has specific proteins sticking off of it, and a bit of genetic material inside, which is, in the case of the flu viruses, is RNA, not DNA. Okay, so then let's draw, in terms of the size difference between one of your body cells in your respiratory tract, right, that a coronavirus would attack, and the virus itself, there's a huge size difference. So let's say that we've got, this is the cell membrane here, okay, of one of your body cells. So this is one of your body cells, and specifically body cell lining your respiratory tract, right? The inside sinus mucous membranes down into your lungs, the epithelial lining of your lungs, okay? So this is the lining of your respiratory tracts. Respiratory tracts. Okay, right. So you see how giant this body cell is compared to a virus. Virus particles, all viruses, are incredibly small, very small. And they're really not much bigger than a protein molecule, because that's what makes them up. All right, so what happens here is your body cells also have surface proteins. All body cells do. All body cells have all kinds of surface proteins, right? And your body cells that are in your respiratory lining, the specific body cells that are sticking out there are, right, so your surface proteins just happen to fit specifically to the surface proteins on the virus, right? So these guys connect. There's a connection between the virus and your body cell, which becomes the host cell, right? That's the first step of viral infection, is that viruses will specifically only attack the cells in your body that have the right surface proteins. Viruses are picky. They only attack certain tissues. This particular one attacks the cells lining the respiratory tracts, which is why the symptoms that you get are inflammation of all those tracts. That's true for all flu viruses. So there's your first step, is that there's a connection there. Now the next thing is going to be, as we go down, that virus is going to inject, right? So here's the continuation, your cell's going down here, and it has connected, right? It has connected with the surface of your cell, and it will send in, right? Let me just make sure you understand that it's still the virus. The virus is still a coronavirus, but now it's kind of meshed with the surface of your cell, and it's sending in that bit of RNA. Oops, yes, I already did that. Yeah. That bit of RNA is now inside your cell, and that is now going to cause problems, because what happens next is that RNA is going to commandeer your ribosomes. You have ribosomes in there, right? It will use your host cell ribosomes, because it doesn't have any of its own. It will use your ribosomes to make more RNA, So lots of more copies of RNA. And it will also use that to make more of the surface proteins. It will also make more surface proteins and things that you need to make new viruses. Okay? So it's going to commandeer your cell's machinery to make more proteins, viral proteins, right? So you get more viral RNA. I'm recording, and proteins are being replicated, right? Using your machinery, because it doesn't have its own. Okay, then the next thing is that it assembles more viruses, right? So it uses all these parts, and it's going to use, again, it's going to use your Golgi bodies. I actually just saw online a really great video that explains how COVID is working. It uses your Golgi body as a factory floor, right? As a kind of factory floor to assemble more, to make a bunch of new viruses. So you get a whole bunch more, right? You get a whole bunch more viruses with those proteins making them look like crowns are there. So all new coronaviruses are being made using your cell's machinery, because viruses don't have that machinery, so they borrow yours. Okay, and they all have that same RNA in them, okay? And then somebody had asked me a wonderful question about why it is that, that flu viruses are so fast to mutate. And the reason is because the replication of that RNA is often flawed. RNA replication doesn't have as much checking for errors built in as DNA replication does. So that's why DNA viruses are not going to mutate very fast at all, whereas flu viruses, which are all RNA viruses, will tend to mutate much faster. Okay, and then the final step here is that these guys break out of the cell. They break out, and in the process, viruses are released, viruses go to infect other cells, right? Other cells. And this cell in here dies usually. This cell either dies or is marked for death by one of your own body's macrophages. Will come along and kill it, all right? So that's basically the virus life cycle in your cells. And as COVID-19 viruses are attacking your lung lining, now we need to talk about how the immune system is handling that, right? So what is your immune system going to do about this? We have a real issue here. What's going to happen? All right, so what does your immune system do? During all of this. Okay, so first of all, your non-specific immune system, right, is going to do a couple of things. It's detected that an invader is there, and this is going to cause inflammation, fever, all kinds of, this is the flu symptoms that you experience are because of your nonspecific barriers going crazy. So you have inflammation that's going to happen. That's not good in the lungs because inflammation in the lungs from all those cells that are dying, the pus that's going to form because of histamines, putting pus in there and pulling a lot of blood in there and inflaming it, that's what closes up people's lungs and prevents them from breathing well. So that's what's really the dangerous thing about this particular virus, right? Your lungs swelling up right where you need to be breathing is not a good thing. But you have inflammation, you have fever, you have histamines that are flowing, that are creating pus, all kinds of things that are giving you flu symptoms, right? And making you a very unhappy person, maybe even sending you to the hospital. Right? Okay. So one thing, though, one part of the nonspecific immune system that students get really confused about is something called a macrophage. In the midst of all this inflammation and hemming and hawing and fire trucks bringing all kinds of things to the table, you have macrophages that are a part of this system. Macrophages eat viruses, break them up, and present bits of them. Present bits, little tiny parts of them. So the specific part of your immune system, those specific immune cells, can be activated to make what's really going to solve the problem, which are, so you can make something called antibodies. So here's what's going on. We don't make antibodies in the nonspecific, but you do have one cell, right? A white blood cell. This is a big white blood cell. It's a white blood cell called a macrophage. Macro, which means big, a macrophage. It's a big cell that eats other cells or eats things that look shady, okay? And here's your virus, right? Here's that same little virus that's running around creating havoc and infecting your cells and causing problems for you. Here's that COVID-19 virus. In it goes into the macrophage. Goes into the macrophage and it gets broken up right into pieces, and some of those pieces are part of the RNA, and some of those pieces are part of the proteins, and it all gets broken up into bits. Okay? All right. Macrophage consumes the bad guys, right? Or what we might call pathogens, fully functional pathogens, right? Breaks them up. Breaks them into small bits, which we call antigens. Very big difference between an antigen, which is a tiny part of a pathogen, right? So here's the fully functional pathogen. Here are potential antigens, right? So that's what it does. And then it connects, it connects an antigen to an MHC protein, presents the antigen to your body cells, to your body fluids.